afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Sew Along today, the machine bag sew along. And I'd like to thank every single person that's here today. And if you're back again after yesterday, you're really brave. And I do really appreciate your presence here today with me. So wherever you are in the world, I do welcome you. And like we said yesterday, we're making this machine bag by Mrs. H. And just a quick recap on what we've done. We've cut out all our pattern pieces and we've interfaced them all and added the foam to them. The only thing we haven't done yet is actually sew the foam round pattern piece A and pattern piece B, which is the zip gusset. So we're going to start off with that today. And also when we're making the mesh, if your machine has got a stretch stitch, you might want to use it. And if you're like me and you don't have a clue where your stretch stitch is, you might want to dig out your manual like I had to today. But it's a really simple stitch, and most new machines do have it somewhere really near. So we're going to do that. And if you don't have your manual, this might be a good time to just whiz it out and try and figure out what the stitch is. So today's project, like I said, we're just going to sew round with the foam, attach the foam to the piece A and to the zip gusset. And I'll take these out of the way and then we'll begin sewing. So these are my main panels, the A piece, and we're working only with the main fabric, the outer fabric. We're not adding the foam to the to the lining fabric. So I'll just take those two out of the way. And please remember, we need 1/4 inch, just all the way around. And then we're going to trim any excess between the stitching and the edge. We're going to trim off any excess foam that we have there. It just helps with the bulk when we have to finish off every other thing we have to do. So, hello, Sewing Patterns by Mrs. H. Nice to see you. So we're going to start by sewing round. Make sure you stretch out your foam properly on your pattern piece A, because the foam sort of has a mind of its own, and I've just had to sort of pin it all down. You can see I have 6 pins all the way around just so it stays where I want it to stay. So we're just going to go to the machine now and sew round. And please remember, it's 1/4 inch seam allowance. When I get to the curves, I tend to go nice and slow so that I get the curve nice and neat. And yesterday, there was this hissing noise, this crackling noise on the mic. So I've opted out of the mic today. But if anybody cannot hear me properly, please let me know so that I can sort of find a workaround. There's always something we can do. And please don't hesitate to ask any questions if you have any. Hello, Judith from Texas. Like I said yesterday, though I'm using fusible foam, please, well, fusible foam, I haven't fused it. I'm actually just sewing it down. So if that's what you've got, that would also work brilliantly. And please make sure you're fusing it to the wrong side of your pattern piece way over the interfacing that you must have attached onto it earlier. So the next thing we're going to do is we will have to trim off any excess from the edges, but I'll do that once I've gone around every single one of them because it just makes life a lot easier. And typically you should be using a basting stitch, but I haven't used the basting stitch, but it's fine because it's still going to be within the final seam allowance. Reason through those. Now the finished dimensions of this is 16.5 inches by 12.5 by 9. So it should fit most sewing machines, but if your machine is one of the ones that won't fit into it, there is a way to sort of extend the pattern, and we can get that information to you if you do need it, but please let us know. And then remember, we've got to do the same thing with the zipper gussets as well. So I'm just going to get those and 1/4 inch basting stitch all the way around the four corners, and then all around the four corners, and then we're going to trim back the excess like I said. And with this one too, I've pinned it down all the way down the middle because the foam just has this tendency of scrunching up, which really annoys me. So I've just pinned it down all the way down in the middle, so it's away from my sewing and everything, and that should make it a lot easier to manage. zipper gusset, and on the bottom of the bag, the base gusset, is all because of number one, stability, and also to protect our sewing machine when we're carrying it all around with us. So we should bear that in mind when we're doing this, that though it might seem tedious now, but eventually when the bag is all done, it will be such a relief that we've gone through all of these processes. So we're just going to sew the last one down, trim it all back, trim all the foam back, and then we'll move on to the next bit. Hi Sharon, how are you? Thank you for joining us. So what we're doing is attaching the foam to the zipper gusset and to the main piece A, and we've completed the main piece A, and we're just basting it on. So we're using a quarter of an inch seam allowance and basting all the way around it. So that's where we are right now, and just let us know if you have any questions or if anything is not clear. I'm being very careful with the pins I've attached all down the middle, because pins tend not to like it very much. So all the pieces have now been done, and then the next bit would be to carefully cut round the excess, any excess we have. Make sure you don't cut into your stitches and you don't cut into the main fabric, which will be poking out at the end of it. So if you can just move that out of the way and trim the foam as best you can away from the edge. So it makes life a lot easier later, and it reduces the bulk when we begin to put all the different layers together. So I've got to be very, very careful here. I don't snip into my outer fabric. If you've got an industrial machine and one that's powerful enough to go through all the layers, then you can skip all these steps really. But though I know mine should be able to go through it, I would still rather just do this because I don't feel like changing needles anywhere along the line unless I have to. Hi Trudy, how are you? Thanks for joining us this evening. I always seem to have you in my head, Trudy, every single time I'm sewing. Because every time I ask you, so what's the seam allowance? You just go, whatever you like. And that always sticks to my mind every single time I'm sewing. But with these ones, we're following all the recommendations and everything. Well, as close as possible as we can, because I know I've skipped a few steps and I intend to skip a few steps further down the line. But please, I will talk you through all the steps I'm skipping, even if I don't actually do them. Okay, I hope I've gone all round. Oh my god, one more side. Seriously. So this is one of the things that actually takes up most of the time when you're making bags and doing anything, is all the tiny bits and pieces that we need to do to make our bags come out looking really very nice. So as this is live, there really isn't so much I can do because there's no way I can rush off and then rush back and it's all nice and done. So you will just bear with me as I reduce the volume on these, because we will definitely need them as we in most of what we do today. So that's one gusset done. And if you've pinned down your foam, please remember to take out the pins you've used, because I've just noticed that some of my pins are still in there. And I can see myself screaming somewhere down the line. So like I said, be very careful when you're trimming. Try not to cut into your outer fabric. Okay. I hope you're all doing as well, almost as well as I am. I haven't snipped the outer fabric yet, but I'm moving dangerously close to doing that. But I shall try to just remain nice, cool, and calm while I do this. And please, there is no rush. If you're cutting as well, just take your time to do the cutting, because it's going to take you about as much time as me as well. So I'm not rushing anywhere, and I'm not going to be going so much ahead of you anyway. So please take your time to do the cutting and cut off any excess that you need to cut off. Hi, Catherine. How are you? So now we move to the main panels, A, and just snip round as well. I cheated in some places because I knew the foam wouldn't go around, but I still snipped a tiny little bit of it. So those places I wouldn't need to trim, and that sort of helps me speed up. But I think I got most of it. And okay, that looks okay. I shove it to one side, and the very last one. I should have given us all homework to do, as in make sure you sew all your foams on and you trim it before you come for the next sew along. But it's nice to have it all doing. It's nice for us all to be doing the same things all together. So cut carefully, please, so we don't have to cut the outer fabric all over again. And we are done, I think. Oh, I hope. Oh gosh, no, one more side. Yes, we're done. So those are all the foams attached with a 1/4 inch seam, based in stitch all the way around. Pattern piece A, the outer panels, and the zip gusset piece on the outer panels as well. So like I said earlier, please remove all the pins you have stuck into your fabric if you've stuck the foam down with pins or anything, because I am sure lots of us will be screaming if we don't get this done, as the pins have a tendency of merging with everything. So that's done now. And the next step we're going to do today is we're going to put together the mesh pocket and attach it to the lining of piece A, the main bag. Yeah, the back body lining. So we've got our mesh, which should be the E, pattern piece E, if you've labeled it. And I sort of attached my, well, pinned my elastic to it. And remember, the elastic is 13.5 inches, just in case. And the way we're going to do this is you have your mesh. The curves are right at the bottom there. So we want to put in 3 pins to mark out how we're going to attach the fold of our elastic. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold that in half, and we're going to insert a pin in there. Now, because it's full of holes, I don't see how easy that is going to be, but I hope it holds. Okay, it's there. And then we need to find the mid of that bit from the pin to the end. We need to find the midpoint again. So we find the midpoint and we stick a pin in as well. It would all make sense once we have it all done. And on this side as well, we find the midpoint. So technically you could just go that way and you could go that way. So on the first fold there, you stick a pin in, and then you stick a pin on both folds, on either side of the folds on this side. On this side, you would only have one fold and the other 2 edges will be open. But then on this side, you would have 2 overlapping folds. So you want to make sure you're putting the pins into each of the folds. So I'm just going to stick a pin into the second one. Now, because it's very holy, I'm just attaching the pins in like that. So I've got 3 pins in there, as you can see. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my elastic. And please, when you're doing this with the elastic, try not to stretch it, because then we don't get the nice scrunched up feel that we want to get. So like I said, you can do that and then fold it over again. And we just need to put pins into each one of those folds on either side of them. So I've creased it so I can see where the fold should go. I'm not sure if this happens to you. You have a whole jar full of pins and they're all multicolored. And you just want to pick out pins. But the ones your hands keep picking up are the ones that match the color of the fabric you're actually working with. And I don't know if it's just me, but that happens to me a lot and it's very frustrating. So the next thing we're going to do now is I'm going to place this up here, and I hope you can see. We're going to start from the very middle pin that's on the mesh. So that's your mesh, and that's the middle pin, which I've used white because that was what I could pick out. And for the elastic, it's the purple one. So we're going to start with that one and make sure the pins match. Try not to stretch the mesh when you're adding the pin on. So once I've matched the edges, I pin it, well, I match the mesh to the middle of the fold over elastic, because I'm going to be folding the elastic over anyway. So it's matched to the middle, and then it is very finicky, but you can do it. Once that has been done, I fold it over, making sure that the mesh is actually way, way, way up into the elastic. So I'm trying to make it go top to bottom and not sideways. So it hasn't pinned that on. We'll do it again. So you want the middle. I'm using purple this time. And then we want the middle of that. Okay, got the middle. Now we want to match both middle pins and then turn. Make sure your mesh is sitting in the middle of the elastic, because it's sort of it's going to be half on one side, half on the other side. So you want it to be sitting right in the middle, and then you want to fold it over, and this time it's going sideways. Okay, that stayed. Now remember I said at the beginning that if you have got an elastic, a stretch stitch on your sewing machine, try using that. If you don't know what your stretch stitch is, like I didn't, please grab your manual and check for where it is, because I only just found out which of all those massive stitches have, well, which one of them is actually the elastic one. So okay, so I've fit the right foot in now, and I'll be using the stretch stitch to make if you don't have the stretch stitch, you should be able to get away with a zigzag stitch as well, if you sort of lengthen the width of it as the stitch on your machine. So see whichever one you've got and whichever one works for you. So we've already done the center, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to match the other needles, the other pins, match them, and then fold over the elastic on them as well, like we did for the center one. And we're going to do that for the last one as well. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. We're going to, you can see that the elastic does not go all the way down, but that's fine because it stretches. So we're going to start from the very, very edge, fold it over, and if you've got, you can also use clips to clip them in place. So remember that you're going to have to stretch the elastic. So from the end, once you start sewing, you're going to stretch the elastic to to where the first pin is. So when you start sewing from there to there, you stretch the elastic. Make sure you're not stretching the mesh though. So just stretch the elastic and sew down, and that's what we're going to try and do now. Try being the operative word. So I'm just using 2 clips. And when you start, please backstitch. Make sure you backstitch when you start sewing to reinforce the ends as well. And because the mesh is so flimsy, make sure you keep checking to make sure it's in between the elastic as you go along, because the whole aim of this is to make sure that the elastic is well in between so that to make sure the mesh is well in between the elastic. So when you get to the very first needle with your needle down, remove the pin that you put in place, and then carry on working to the next one. And to get to the next one as well, make sure you stretch the elastic. Make sure the mesh is right in between. So as you get to each staging station, I'm calling the pin staging stations now. So as you get to each one of them, make sure that you slow down. Your needle is down, and you remove the pin that's in place, and make sure the mesh is right in between, because it just popping out every single time. Okay, and then we continue sewing. So I'm making sure that the only thing I'm stretching right now is just the elastic and not the mesh as well, which is why the mesh is misbehaving, but that's fine. So like I said, when you get to the middle pin, the next pin, with your needle down, you take the pin out and you carry on sewing to the very next one. And I just give it a quick check to make sure that the mesh is right in between the elastic before I carry on. So when you get to the next pin, take it out and then stretch the elastic all the way to the end, not the mesh, but the elastic. And make sure the net mesh is right in between the two. Okay, I've missed the mesh on one side, so I'm just going to rip that open. And now where's my scenery bar? That's me just being so confident I was going to do everything okay without the need for a seam ripper, but no such luck. Okay, can see that, but I couldn't see it properly from the front. If you're using matching thread and you make this mistake, it's going to be difficult for you to see the thread to be able to take out the stitches, but it is doable. And the other reason is because my stitches are so tiny. Don't ask me why I've done tiny stitches, but they are really, really very tiny. Okay, can see better now. And hopefully that should do it. And if anybody has any tips on how to remove stretch stitch from elastic, I would really, really love to know. Okay, come on. Okay, that looks better. Where is my tiny little key one? I'm just taking off all the excess threads hanging. Okay. So back to the sewing machine, and those stitches were very, very tight, I wouldn't lie, but I've managed to sort of like chop them off, so they're fine. Okay, that's done, and phew, it's all in this time. So yep, that looks good. So just trimming off all the hanging threads. There shouldn't have been one there, but there now is. So that's it, and that's the effect we're trying to have, so that it all scrunches up. It all scrunches up nicely. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach this mesh pocket to the lining fabric, one of the lining fabrics. So the main panel, we're going to be attaching that to it. So you want to make sure that it's lining up with the long end of with the long edge of your lining fabric. The bottom of it is lining up nicely, and once you've lined it all up, you want to sew around 3 edges. So it's like that, and we want to sew around 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to have to stretch that to meet at the very edge there, and I'll pin it all down, make sure it all matches nicely, pin or clip down, and with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, I'm just going to baste it in place. So it's going to scrunch up like that anyway, because that's the effect we want it to have. But we're just going to surround the 3 edges to start with. And remember, 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, straight stitch again. I think it's that one. And then just sew all the way around it. Increase my stitch length to 4. And then let's see what happens this time around. So there we go. This is just basting it in place, so we're not really actually doing the final stitching yet. So once it's been basted in place, then we can decide what we want to do. We have the option of either sewing right down the middle or just leaving it the way it is, but it depends on what you want to carry in it. So if you intend to carry your machine foot in it as well, you might want to know what the width, or the width of your machine foot is, and then measure that out and then just sew right down the middle. Oh, it's not the foot, it's the pedal, but because my foot is on it, it's the foot. Okay, so we should be on the home run for this one too. So like I said, if you do want to measure your pedal, your machine pedal, you can do that now, and mine is roughly about 4.5 inches. So you can measure 4.5 inches in from the edge. Well, actually not from the edge. So 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, 4.5. I'll just make it 5.5 from the edge, or 6. But then, yeah, roughly about that. Yeah, because it was 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. And then it depends on how much space you want it to have out, as in how much buffer space it's got on both sides. So mine would be roughly between 6-ish, and the reason why I'm not marking it is because I can my fabric has lines, so I can just sew right down the line, and that will be fine. You stay. So right from the top, I'm just going to sew right down. And this is where the elastic is really, the fold over elastic we've used for the top is really good, because the mesh stretches anyway to you either way, and the elastic as well at the top. So anything you place inside it is going to be sort of like gripped nicely, and it's not going to move around or shake around when you're carrying it. So it's quite good. I back stitched at the top but not at the bottom, because the bottom is still going into the seam allowance anyway, so that's okay. So we've done that, and the next bit says, yeah, divide it on, it'll all depend on the size. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to prepare the base gusset. So we put this aside for now, and the main piece as well, we put them aside, and we go for the base gussets. If only I knew where I place things, that would be really, really nice. So the base gusset is C, is the one that we've labeled C. The D would have been the stabilizers that have already gone on the base gussets anyway, so we really don't need that now. We've done E, we're now on C. Seems like we're working backwards. So we're going to need a pencil and a ruler to do this, because we need to make markings on it. This machine has bag feet on it, and we're going to mark the places where the bag feet are going to go. I will not be adding the bag feet on, but I will mark every single place where it's going to go to, and I'm going to sort of explain where they all, they all need to be marked. So don't worry about that. And it's quite easy to stick the feet on, because they have like hooks. It's just like putting in the turn locks and stuff. So they have, or magnetic snaps. So they have prongs, and you stick them through, and then you bend them over and stuff. So that's it. But we need to mark exactly where they go first, and that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to measure and mark 2 holes in the center of the base gusset, and that's going to be, so the center of the base gusset is going to be roughly, I have to measure that, I can't remember what it was. So it's roughly, okay, so that's the center. So I've marked the center. So find the center of your base gusset, and it's the whole thing, not just the foam. So the whole thing you've got, make sure you find the center of that. And then from the long edge, so from the long edge, measure 2 centimeters, sorry, 2 inches in. I'm using inches, not centimeters. So measure 2 inches in on both sides of the long side to start with, and mark those on the center line. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but I've marked 2 inches on from the edge on the center line, up there and down there. Then the next thing we need to do is from those 2 inches, we need to measure 6.5 and mark 4 holes from that point. So that will be 4 holes on all the edges. So you should have something that looks like that. Okay, yeah, you can see 6, 1, 2, 3 at the top and 1, 2, 3 at the bottom as well. So it's find the middle, 2 inches on the middle line, mark 2 inches from the long end of both long ends, and then from that measure out 6.5 inches on both sides, and then you have all 4. And I will repeat that on the lining fabric and on the core board. Remember, we cut out the core board as well, but the core board is slightly smaller, so the measurements are going to be just slightly different for the core board. But I'll just quickly do this as well, just in case it's required, and it doesn't take time at all to get this done. So the center of the, which should be roughly about 10, or it should be 10. And then from there, measure 6.5 out. So that's done on the lining as well. And then for the base gusset, it's going to be 1.25 from the edge, from the long edges instead of 2. So that's meant to match up exactly with they're meant to match up exactly with the markings we've made on our gusset pieces there. So that's why, because if you remember, the foam is right in the middle of the gusset pieces. So the extra spaces at both ends is what's not in the foam. So that's why the measurement from the edges are going to be slightly different. So that's 16.5. That would be 8. And then 6.5 away from the center, which would still be the same thing. You might want to drill the holes through because to make it easier when the feet are put through, the prongs of the feet are actually put through. So you want to make sure that the holes go right through from one end to the other. So if you've got, I don't have a drill here, but oh, my seam ripper seems to be able to do the job. So it's just to make sure that the hole goes all the way through to the other side. And yeah, so once that's done, so once we've done that, we're just going to put those to one side for now. And then we're going to start on the gussets, the zip and the gusset. Okay, first we need to prepare the zip, which I don't do, but I'll try and do it. So make sure you have all your gusset pieces, the zipper gussets. Make sure all the pieces are close by, and that would be the B. And like I said, I normally don't prepare my zips because I just but the thing is we need to sort of stitch. Yeah, we need to sew the ends of the zips together. So if you're using a double zip, just sew the ends together so they don't come apart or anything. And you can use a long stitch length for that. So, yep. I haven't backstitched over the zipper teeth anyway, but like I said, be fine. And if it's not, so what I've done is I've found the center of my zip, and all I had to do was, because it just makes it easier when you need to attach it and all. So I found the center and I've notched the center on both sides so that when I start attaching it, it makes it just that little bit easier. So the outer gusset, which would be your outer fabric, make sure it's facing upwards. So right side up, and place. Now you can use basting tape. You can use I normally just use pins, but it's saying to use a basting tape. Put a basting tape on, and then put your zipper on and face down, and then put another basting tape on, and then put the lining on top of it. But I just normally pin every single thing down. Pins seem to work well for me. And then I have to change the to a zipper foot as well. So if you've got a zipper foot, it is really, really great. And I love using my zipper foot. And I've got one with a tapered end, so it just skims right through whenever I'm sewing the zipper, and I don't even have to move the pulls or anything. So bear that in mind when you're working. If you've got a zipper foot, it's a good idea to change to your zipper foot. Now, because it's a long zip, I do understand why using a tape might be advantageous, but I don't think I've ever actually used the tape to make anything. As it a double-sided tape to make a zipper. So, and I'm not prepared to experiment or try now. So I pin that in place. And then go over to the back and pin the back in place. So if you remember yesterday, I did mention that we should notch the zipper gussets. We should notch them at the centers to make life easier. So the notches are already there, and you can see that on the opposite side. I've already notched it. So what I've done here is, because the zipper tape has been notched as well, I just matched up the notches and just pinned the rest of it down. The lining has also been notched. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just match up the notches again and then stitch it down. Now, because this is directional, I'm trying to see if I can make any. Oh, it doesn't matter. It's on the inside. So I'm going to just match those, pin my notches together, and then alternatively, if you're comfortable with putting your zipper pulls back on, and you've got all the time to do it, I would have done it that way as well, but because of time and because I fumble with having to put it all back on, you can actually separate the zips. Because they're double-sided, you can just separate them, stick one side on, stick one side on, and then put the zipper pulls. It's a lot easier, trust me. But because I had trouble putting the zipper pulls on before I started, I've decided I shall leave the pulls on. I'm sure if all I was doing was just playing around with all I was doing was playing around with the zips, the pulls wouldn't be a problem at all. As in, I would take them off easily, put them back on. But because I'm so nervous, it's like I just couldn't put the zips on this afternoon, and I thought to myself, oh my goodness. Okay. So if you've got Wonder Clip, you can clip it all the way down, but I've just pinned it down because I just normally clip. I can't tell you why I clip, but why I pin, but I just always pin. I hardly ever clip it down. But please bear in mind it's really long, so do whatever works for you and what's easiest for you. So once you've sewn the zip, you might want to trim some of the heavy interfacing away as well. So some of you might be way ahead of me on this one, but please whatever stage you're at, if you're just starting to sew just like me, or if you've already sewn and you're just waiting for me, either one. And remember, if you opt your stitch length, please make sure you turn it back to the regular stitch length before you start sewing. Oh my God, that's too far. So this should end up, hopefully it should end up nice and straight and not wonky, because I have a feeling it's wonky, but it's so if you're having any issues with any of the stages, please just let me know, and I will try and answer you on this side. Okay. Okay, my video seems to have gone pear-shaped. So once that is done, we want to trim off any excess that's on there if we've got any, and if we don't, it's even better. And the next thing we need to do is turn our gusset wrong sides together, and we need to take it to the ironing board and just press it down nicely so it's all nice and smooth, because we're now going to top stitch, and then we're going to do the same thing for the other side, for the other side of the zipper gusset. If for any reason you have your seam seems to be too bulky, please feel free to sort of trim off some of the excess away from it. I'm just pressing this into submission right now. Okay, nicely pressed into submission. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch. I guess that's the next thing I have to do. Okay. I'm limping because my leg is already on the machine pedal, and I'm trying not to press it. So at this stage, just because of how it is and how bulky it is, you might want to just use a few clips to hold it in place to make sure that the ends are exactly where you want them to be. And because they do have a tendency of shifting as you sew right along. So now we're just going to top stitch along that, the zipper, top stitch. No, that stitch is wonky. Okay, that has been done nicely. So we now need to do the same thing for the other end of the gusset as well. So it's the right side up, and remember we've put notches in and everything, so I'm going to be relying on the notches to make sure that everything is right where it's meant to be. So with the right side of your main outer fabric facing up, place the zipper right side down on top of it. If you've notched your zipper and the zipper and the zipper gusset, match up your notches, stick a pin in, and then pin or clip all the way to the end. I cut my zipper tape slightly longer than the required length anyway, so if it looks a bit longer, that's why, but it's fine. And then we place the lining right sides on top of it. So it should be, yeah, it should be that way. So, yeah, my fabric is directional and that's why it's a bit confusing. But apart from that, ouch, ow. Okay, so it's just pinning the lining right sides together onto the back of the zipper. So the zipper is lying face down on the outer fabric, and the lining is lying on the back of the zipper. I hope that makes sense. So the outer fabric is face up. The the um the zipper is face down on top of the outer fabric, and the lining fabric is face down on the back of the lining fabric, on the back of the zipper. Okay, make sure you're sewing in a nice straight line and that everything matches up nicely, because straight line sewing is not always the easiest. just getting to the end of this now, and making sure it's all nice and straight so it looks decent on the other side. Oh no, I've run out of bobbin thread, that's why I'm screaming. And my lovely sewing machine doesn't tell me when it's running out, so oh my goodness. Okay. Because I use large spools of thread, I just put a thread stand behind my machine and just use everything from there. So that's why it all looks funny, and the way I'm threading it might look a bit funny as well, but the thread stand is right behind. Okay, let's give this another try, and hopefully we should have better results. And almost there. Okay, and we're going to go press again to the, so with the two right sides of what we've just done, the outer gusset and the zip and the lining together, we're just going to press that, give that a good press. And if there is any bulk and you feel you do want to get rid of the bulk, please go ahead and snip it off. Just within the seam allowance though. Don't snip off your properly sewn fabric and everything. And once that has been done, we're going to top stitch again. So I'm just going to use clips to hold the edges in place so that it stays nice and straight while I top stitch, and just the top and the bottom. And then I'm just going to go ahead and top stitch. All we're just doing now is top stitching and once we top stitch, the next bit will be to add this zipper gusset to the base gusset. Okay, so as you can see, the zip has been added to it. The zip is right there in the middle, and it opens up nicely. So now what we need to do is we need to trim this panel to match the zipper gusset, the base gusset, sorry, which are these two. We already know what the measurements are for those. So it's 9 by the length we have. So we need to trim this zip gusset to the same size as these ones because we'll be attaching them together anyway. So that would be the next thing we have to do now. And we would have to start, make sure that it's centralized on the zipper, as in right in the center, and then we're going to trim it. Now there are two ways I could do this. I could use this as a template, making sure it's nice and centralized, and then cut to the size I want. And if you're going to do that, please bear in mind that if you've placed notches in, your notches are going to be cut off anyway. So, or you can just fold that in half, measure from the end to where the zipper stops. It should give you 4.5 inches, and anything, well, from where the middle of the zipper to the end, it should give you 4.5, and whatever's left is what you need. But please make sure that both you folded it in half, because you don't want to snip just one side and leave the other side open. So you want that to be, so that's your full zipper gusset, and you want it to be folded in half, and you measure from the zip edge inwards. You want to measure 4.5 inches, and then you want to snip off whatever is excess. So once you've done that, you should have 9 inches exactly. But because this is quite a long one, I'm thinking we might want to stop here today and pick up from here on Thursday. We don't have a class tomorrow, so tomorrow would be a good time to sort of relax, look over every single thing we've done. If there is anything that anybody would like to sort of alter or change, or any tiny mistake we've made, we might want to look into that tomorrow, but I won't be here. And on Thursday, we're going to come back again at 5 o'clock UK time, and we're going to carry on with it. So the bits that need to be done now are quite pretty straightforward. We just need to trim that to be the same size as the base gusset, attach the base gusset to the zipper gusset, and once that is done, then we're going to make the main body and all that, and this shouldn't take too long. So on Thursday we will definitely be back, and hopefully we'll have so much more fun together, making mistakes, correcting them, and having fun sewing. Have a lovely evening or have a lovely day, everyone, depending on where you are. And I shall see you all on Thursday. Thank you very much again for joining us, and I've enjoyed your company. Thanks. Bye.